I'm at Grand Canyon Village at Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona, and in this video I'm going to go into the history of Grand Canyon Village. This is the town, kind of the center of the park in the South Rim, and the whole district is a National Historic Landmark. I'm going to go on a ranger tour. I'm going to go look at the buildings. But first I'm going to go into Verkamp's store, built in 1906. Let's check this out. So in this video, I'm pretty much disregarding this. This is more about the historic buildings here. John Verkamp opened a store in the South Rim in 1898. This building is 1906. And his business is the only one to survive until today. It survived the Depression, the only business in the Grand Canyon that survived. And Verkamp's Curios is on the National Register. Here's some petrified wood. This is inside. They have an exhibit on the village. John Verkamp actually set up a tent in 1898 to sell his curios before going to this building. It took a long time to get out here, and this was Peggy Verkamp's bag. Louis Aiken, who painted for the Santa Fe Railroad, made this awesome painting. Apparently there were very strong class distinctions, and there was also segregation here. So there's the store, and here is the canyon. It's built right next to it.
We gotta back up a second though to tell you why Grand Canyon Village is even here. It's because the train started coming to the south rim of Grand Canyon. How many of you guys think that you like Grand Canyon enough that even if it had taken you an entire day to travel 70 miles from Flagstaff or Williams, you would still be here visiting? You guys are a pretty representative group, actually, because before there was train service, it would have just been those people who raised their hand, who made the effort to come all the way out here and paid the money to do it. But after the train started running, a lot more people started coming out here, the rest of you guys who want to get here fast. And John Verkamp, I don't think he would have started his store here if there hadn't been all those people coming. Because he tried, before there was a train in 1898, the founder of Verkamp's store, he set up a tent right over where the Bright Angel Lodge is now. And he tried to sell supplies and souvenirs out of that tent. It lasted not more than 2 weeks before he gave up. There was kind of a tent city around where Bright Angel Lodge is now, and so he sold off all the goods from that store. He tells the story about something that was going on when he was younger between him and his dad, and it has to do with this question of marketing. So Jack said in his oral history interview, right about this area where we're standing, he said, we had a little operation going on up there for some little while, where he acquired a big old binocular scope. He had it mounted on the wall in front, and he would show them different points of interest with that telescope. He's talking about visitors to the canyon. We got into kind of a deal where I would go down the rim, and I guess you might say illegally, contacted the tourists. I would tell them about this gentleman up the rim 100 yards or so, was pointing at some different things through a magnificent telescope. So they'd go up there, he'd show them around, and then he'd send them into the store to see the painting. That's when my mother would get hold of them. Jack had said earlier that of everyone in his family, himself, his dad, his mom, and his 3 sisters, his mom was definitely their best salesperson.
This is Hopi House. It was built in 1905 and designed by Mary Jane Coulter. Coulter was from Santa Fe. And this building does look very Pueblo-esque. And she designed a lot of the historic buildings here in Grand Canyon. I have a couple of them in my different videos. There's another view of Hopi House. It's actually a pretty big building. Hopi House itself is a National Historic Landmark. Albert Einstein had his picture taken right here when he visited. Inside they have a lot of Navajo crafts. The Hopi used to showcase their culture here. There's dancing outside in 1949. The ceiling is designed like the Pueblos usually would have them, and the light fixtures are very interesting. I've never seen anything like that. You can buy a Native American made bow and arrow. Here's some dream catchers. There's a gallery in the upstairs part. These little sculptures are storytellers. I don't think I've ever been in a building like a Pueblo, so this is really cool. Even though this isn't genuine, she still included a lot of the architectural features. That's a cool fireplace. The Navajo are famous for their rugs. They're really cool. Yes, they have a creepy wax figure. Wasn't expecting to see one of these here. When the building opened, Nampeo, who did perform and do dances, lived up here in this apartment. This store is actually Hopi made. And it's over 150 years old, and it's from Orabi, Pueblo in New Mexico.
I'll tell you that one of the things one of my favorite views in Grand Canyon National Park is the one I get when I stand here actually with my back to the canyon. If you have an interest in architectural history, it's super cool because you look back at El Tovar Hotel. So Santa Fe Railroad described that building as a cross between a Swiss chalet and a Norwegian hunting lodge. Super European, which was kind of really trendy in the years right before 1905 to try to replicate European buildings. Then you look over here, this building, Hopi House, opened that same year, 1905. But you can see in this building where Mary Coulter and Frank Lloyd Wright and some others in the architectural community were going into the future with this idea of organic architecture, building buildings that reflected the place where they were situated. And so I love that if you imagine yourself back in 1905, you can look backward and forward in terms of U.S. architecture just using these two buildings. The thing I do want to hit a little bit with you guys, though, about Hopi House is that it is this touchstone to how the National Park Service has thought about not only conserving historic objects, but also conserving living cultures.
And this is the 1905 El Tovar Hotel. El Tovar is one of the great national park, old rustic grand hotels. And it reminds me a lot of Old Faithful Inn at Yellowstone. It's just awesome. And this is the lobby of El Tovar. This is like an amazing example of rustic architecture. There's taxidermy up on the walls. There's a deer and a big moose. There's a lot of beautiful artwork of the canyon in here.
But there was already this big conversation going on across the country about how you should treat places like Grand Canyon. One of the big voices in that conversation was president during a lot of those years. It was Theodore Roosevelt. And he has a particular connection to El Tovar. El Tovar was a railroad hotel. The Santa Fe Railroad finished it in about 1905. And Roosevelt came to Grand Canyon for the first time 2 years before that. He had a busy day, but one of the things he did, which isn't that surprising since he was president at the time, was to give a speech. So he stood not very far down the rim, kind of in the Bright Angel Lodge vicinity again, and he gave this speech. And it's, to me as a historian, I find it a pretty revealing speech. He talks about water in it. He talks about reclamation and what that is doing for the country. He talks about his military experience some. He offers his own ideas of the role that Native Americans play in U.S. society. And he also said this. He said in that speech, "I hope you will not have a building of any kind. Not a summer cottage, a hotel, nothing that will mar the wonderful grandeur the sublimity, the great loneliness and beauty of the canyon. Not a building of any kind. Kind of strong words. 2 years later, the Santa Fe Railroad finishes El Tovar Hotel. One of the first times I brought a group of people in here, one of the women who knew something about Roosevelt, she looked around and she said, "That's funny. I would think that Theodore Roosevelt would like this hotel." It turns out he did. He came back to Grand Canyon a few times, and about one of those later trips, he wrote a chapter in a book. And he said that on July 14, 1913, our party gathered at the comfortable El Tovar Hotel, on the edge of the Grand Canyon of the Colorado, and therefore overlooking the most wonderful scenery in the world. So I'm 41 years old, and my life experience has kind of made me think that people are pretty contradictory creatures. But that is extreme. To go from not a building of any kind to these poetic waxings about this super comfortable hotel.
That's a portrait of Fred Harvey. I think he bought out the Santa Fe Railroad that built this hotel. This is the second floor mezzanine area. I don't think I'm supposed to be up here because I'm not a guest, but whatever. And this is the lobby from above. I love that they include taxidermy. Just completes the rustic atmosphere of the place. This little dining room on the side is called the Teddy Roosevelt room. So I'm guessing Teddy Roosevelt would have ate here while he stayed here.
I got to eat at the beautiful historic dining room at El Tovar. It had a lot of famous guests: Teddy Roosevelt, Bill Clinton, Paul McCartney. The plates are reproductions of what was originally used here. There are also murals representative of 4 local tribes: the Mojave, the Navajo, the Hopi, and the Apache.
This is the side of El Tovar that faces the canyon. It says on there, "Dreams of mountains as in their sleep, they brood on the things eternal."
Whole groups that have really close connections to Grand Canyon. And the one that lived right here on the rim and down in the canyon when newcomers like the Santa Fe Railroad, the National Park Service, John Verkamp started coming here is called Havasupai. I deem it just and necessary to keep the wild and unappreciable Indian from off the reserve. So 20 years after the reservation started. When there are 11
There's a bus system at the south rim, and it's a good idea because, you know, there's less traffic, less parking, and you can just ride that and park in one place. And there's some areas you have to ride the bus to get to, but they aren't very frequent and they're always full, so they need more buses in circulation for sure. And that is the National Historic Landmark Grand Canyon Train Depot. That's over 100 years old. So people have been arriving here for over 100 years at this rustic train depot. The railroad still runs. There's a train that brings visitors to the park from Williams, Arizona on Route 66, and the train is here right now.
That is the 1926 Grand Canyon Powerhouse. It is also a National Historic Landmark.
Democracy and our freedom. That's what that represents. And then inside this design here is a representation, ceremonial symbolism of the warrior twins. There are many stories of the warrior twins and how they had saved the people here upon the earth from destruction and danger. And so there's beautiful stories that are from this symbol. Mickey Mouse, Pluto, hey, 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 oh. They all work at Disneyland. Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Pluto, too. They're all movie stars at Disneyland. Hey, 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 yo. As you can see, he's got real beautiful long hair, thick. Mine is thinning out because of, age. And so we brush nice and gently. And notice how it was kind of round like that. And I push the center, it kind of spreads out. That's when you start brushing the hair. Then I take the other side, tighten it a little bit.
Alright, so that was Grand Canyon Village. Amazing history and amazing architecture. The tour guide did say that this has the best national park style rustic architecture in here, and I haven't been to all the original national parks where they have this, but I believe that. It's just amazing. Go check out all my other Grand Canyon National Park videos and all my other videos while you're doing that. Thanks for watching.